What is going on, guys? Today we're going to be looking at while loops in Python. Now, in Python, for loops are not the only type of loops that we can use. Another type of loop is called a while loop and is a form of indefinite iteration. A while loop performs a set of instructions as long as the given condition is true. The structure follows the pattern while something you do something, right? So let's examine this example where we print the integers 0 through 3. You have count equals 0, so while count is less than or equal to 3, print count, and then each time we'll increment count by 1. So let's break down this loop real quick. So count is initially defined with the value of 0. The conditional statement in the while loop is count less than or equal to 3, which is true at the initial iteration of the loop, if you think about it, because 0 is less than or equal to 3, so that's good. Which is true, and then inside we print count. So right now we just print out the 0, and then we add 1 to count. So count is still less than or equal to 3, so we print 1 again, and it just keeps doing that until count becomes 4. Then so count becomes 3, right? Count becomes 3. So count is less than or equal to 3 still, so we print out 3, and then when we add the 4 or add 1, which makes it 4, when we go back in, it's going to say nope, this is wrong. So 0, 1, 2, 3 gets printed. Now inside the loop body, count is printed and then incremented by 1. The first iteration of the loop has finished. Python returns to the top of the loop and checks the additional conditional again. Now after the first iteration, count will be equal to 1, so the conditional still evaluates to true, and so the loop continues. This continues until the count variable becomes 4. At that point, when the conditional is tested, it is no longer true. The loop will stop. Note the following about the while loop. We have the indentation. Remember that the while loop will go further out, and then everything else that follows will be indented by a tab. If we ever forget to indent, we will get the indentation error or unexpected behavior. Now, elegant loops, similar to the for loops, Python also allows us to write elegant one-line while loops. So we can do this, but I don't recommend doing this for now, okay? So here we separate with a semicolon to denote a separate line of code. Okay, makes sense. But I do not recommend you do this because it's very dangerous for new programmers. But let's keep going. So examine the while loop from the narrative in the code editor. There are additional print statements to help visualize the iterations. Run the code to see what happens on each iteration of the loop. When you're finished, comment out the example to make space for the rest of the checkpoints. Okay, so we will examine the code here. So we do starting while loop, and then we will loop iteration is still true, and then it just keeps printing count plus 1. So basically whatever we did in here, right? So let's see. Okay, run the code to see what happens. Okay, this happens. So it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, right? And then let's see, run the code to see. When you're finished, comment out the example and make space for the rest of the checkpoints. All right. So the shortcut is Command / on Mac and Control / on Windows. If you notice the run button spinning continuously or a lost connection, you may have an infinite loop. Got you. Okay, makes sense. All right, let's work on this one. Okay. So let's write a while loop that counts down from 10 to 0 inclusive. Now, once our loop is finished, we will commemorate our accomplishment by printing "we have liftoff." All right, so we'll do count equals 10, and then while count is greater than or equal to 0, we will print count, and then we simply do count minus equals 1. I don't think you can do that in Python. Okay, yeah, you can. Okay, so you can do that on Python, so we'll do that. And then we also have to print out this at the very end. Print this. Okay, did you count down? I don't know why they wanted this countdown, but we'll have it as countdown. There you go. And what we did was we initialized countdown to 10, and then while countdown is greater than or equal to 0, we will print the countdown, and then every time we'll just subtract 1 from it. And then at the end, of course, we don't indent this line because we don't want it to be part of the while loop. Because if we do indent it, it's gonna be like this. It's gonna literally print it every single line. So never do that. Okay. Next, let's tackle the actual while loop. To find a while loop that will run our countdown variable that is greater than or equal to 0. 1 iteration. Yeah, okay, we did that. Okay, now that we've built our loop, let's commemorate our success by printing. We did that already. So basically that's what it is. It's very simple, very easy, right? So that was just while loop, just introduction to it. Now we'll get into how to use while loops in lists. So a while loop isn't only good for counting. Similar to how we saw with for loops, working with lists, we can use while loops to iterate through a list as well. Let's return to our ingredient list. We have milk, sugar, vanilla, extract, dough, and chocolate. Now we know that while loops require some form of a variable to track the condition of a loop to start and stop. So take some time to think, what would we use to track whether we need to start or stop the loop if we want to iterate through ingredients and print every element. So if we wanted to start and stop, we would just simply use the length, because you wouldn't want to keep going if you finished the length of the list, right? So I'm guessing we use len. So we know that the list has a predetermined length. If we use the length of the list as the basis for how long our while loop needs to run, we can iterate the exact length of the list. We can use the built-in function len function to accomplish this. Yeah, like I said. Okay, we can use this length in addition to another variable to construct the while loop. So we can do length equals len ingredients index equals 0. So while index is less than length, we can keep going and we can increment the index. Makes sense. So let's break it down. I'm not going to read off the explanations. I'll try my best to explain it to you. Um, I'll flash it up on the screen, but I'll explain it real quick. So length will be 5 in this case because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vanilla extract is one word, by the way. Yeah, it's one ingredient. Sorry, one ingredient. So this is pretty straightforward, right? We just use the len function, which we should be familiar with from the previous exercises on the list. Now, once we get the length, and if you want to pause and read what they say, you can do it now. But once we have that, you can simply go here, and then it says index starts at 0. So index equals 0. And then we still need an additional variable that will be used to compare against our length. So we create the index equals 0. And then while index is less than length means that we haven't reached the end of our list, right? So the first iteration will print the ingredients at the index 0, and then increment the index to access the next element in ingredients. Each iteration gets closer to making the condition no longer true, which is what we ultimately want to do. Now let's use a while loop to iterate through some lists. So we're going to write a while loop to iterate for the provided list Python topics. Now first we'll need a variable to represent the length of a list. So create a variable called length. Alright, length equals len Python topics. Next, we'll require a variable to compare our length. Let's name it index and we'll set it equal to 0. After that, we're going to go ahead and build our loop from scratch. So we want our loop to iterate over the list of Python topics. On each iteration, print I'm learning about element from Python topics. Okay, cool. So the while index is less than length, and the print I am learning about, and then we do plus, and that's index. Okay, and then and then we'll go ahead and do index plus equals 1. Perfect, that's literally all we need. I'm learning about variables, control flow, loops, modules, classes. Now, if you guys have any questions regarding this so far, let me know. I can definitely break it down for you even more. Let's go ahead and take a look at infinite loops real quick as well. So we've iterated through lists that have a discrete beginning and end. However, let's consider this example. We have 4 number in my favorite numbers. My favorite numbers dot append 1. Now, if we do this, let's take some time to ponder what happens with this code. Every time we enter the code or enter the loop, we add a 1 to the end of the list as we are iterating through. As a result, we never make it to the end of the list, it just keeps growing forever. A loop that never terminates is called an infinite loop. So these are very dangerous for our code because they will make our code run forever and thus consume all of the computer's resources. A program that hits an infinite loop often becomes completely unusable. The best course of action is to avoid writing an infinite loop. If you accidentally stumble into an infinite loop while developing your own machine, you can end the loop by using Control-C to terminate the program. If you're writing code in an online editor, you'll just need to refresh the page to get out of the infinite loop. Let's fix an infinite loop. to see it in action. Suppose we have two kinds of students, uh, students period A, period B. We want to combine all students into students period B. In your code editor, we'll provided you a loop. Go ahead and run the uncommented line 5. And before you run the code, ponder why this code will cause an infinite. Because we never stop adding students to A. That's the reason. Because it never increments, basically. Now, once you're ready, run the code. Notice the circle is continuing without anything. This is an infinite loop. To end this program, you must refresh the page. Yeah, see, we lost connection because it was an infinite loop. That we're adding each student in the students A to students A, which would create a never-ending list of all student names. Alright, so we'll just go ahead and refresh it real quick. Should take a second, but not that bad. Alright, here we go. We're back. And then open this. So delete the line causing the infinite loop and fix it to accomplish the original goal of combining all students from students period A to students period B. Simply just do that. And it fixes it. We simply just do Alex, Brianna, Cherry, Daniel. Gets appended, right? Very, very easy to do. That was infinite loops. Next, we'll look at loop control using the break. So loops in Python are very versatile. Python provides a set of control statements that we can use to get more control out of our loops. Let's take a look at a common scenario where we may encounter to use to see a use case for loop control statements. So take the following list. Items on sale as our example. So we have items on sale, the blue shirt, strip socks, knit dress, red headband, dinosaur onesie. And it's often the case that we want to search to a list to check out a specific value exists. Now, what does our loop look like if we want to search the value of the knit dress and print out found it if it did exist? Well, it's going to look something like this. So for item in items on sale, if item equals knit dress, then you simply put found it. This code goes through each item in items on sale and checks for a match. This is all fine and dandy, but what's the downside? Now, once knit dress is found in the list, items on sale, we don't need to go through the rest of the items on sale list. Unfortunately, our loop will keep running until the end of the list. Since it's only 5 elements long, iterating through the entire list is not a big deal in this case. But what if it's 1,000 items or like 100,000 or a million items? This would be a huge waste of time for our program. Thankfully, you can stop the iteration from inside the loop using a break loop control statement. Now, when the program hits a break, it will immediately just exit the loop. For example, if you have our same list here, blue shirt, striped socks, knit dress, red headband, dinosaur onesie, checking the sale list, print item, if item equals knit dress, break, and then end of search. That's it. Once we find the knit dress, we just end. We don't even come to these two. So this would produce blue shirt, striped socks, knit dress, and then we end of search. Done. So when the loop entered the if statement and saw the break, it immediately ended the loop. We didn't need to check the elements of red headband or dinosaur onesie at all. Now let's break some loops. Alright, So if you have a list of dog breeds you want to adopt, so dog breeds available for adoption. Yeah, I'm gonna copy that. I'm not writing all that, bro. Using a for loop, iterate through the dog breeds available for adoption. Again, if you haven't learned about the for loop, check out the previous video. It goes over it in detail. But we'll do for dog and dog breeds. We'll do use a for loop to iterate through the dog breeds list for adoption and print out each dog breed. Has to be a dog breed, okay. Dog breed. Print dog breed. Cool. Now inside of your for loop, after you print each dog breed, check if the current element inside of dog breed is equal to dog breed I want. Okay, check if it is. Okay, if dog breed equals dog breed I want, then we'll do break and then print they have the dog I want. They have the dog I want, yeah. See how it keeps on printing stuff? I don't want that, right? So add a break when your loop has found it. So we'll do break. Yeah, okay, never mind. Sorry, I meant break. There you go. So French Bulldog, Dalmatian, and then they have the dog that I want. So yeah, and then the continue. So I'm gonna just skip over all of this because basically what the continue does, it's everything that the break does, but it continues. So actually we'll just go ahead and go through it together just so that we understand what it does. So while the break control statement will come in handy, there are other situations where we don't want to end the loop entirely. What if we want to skip the current iteration of the loop? Let's take a list of all integers in our example. So what if we want to print out all of the numbers in a list, but only if they are positive? We can use another common loop control statement called continue, which basically lets you skip elements. If we do this for I in big number list, if I is less than or equal to 0, meaning it's positive, then we continue, means we print it out. And this would produce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2. Notice a few things. Similar to when we were using the break control statement, our continue control statement is usually paired with some kind of conditional. When our loop first encountered an element -1 that met the conditions of the if statement, it checked the code inside of the block and saw the continue. When the loop then encounters a continue statement, it immediately skips the current iteration and moves on to the next element in the list. The output of the list only printed positive integers in the list because every time our loop entered the if statement and saw the continue statement, it simply moved to the next iteration of the list and thus never reach the print statement. Now let's continue to learn about control statements and with some exercises. So your computer is the doorman at a bar in a country where the drinking age is 21. Loop through the ages list. If an entry is less than 21, skip it and move to the next entry. Otherwise, print the age. Okay. So do if, for I in ages, and we'll do if age is less than 21, then continue. So if it's greater than or equal to 21, then continue, and then print I. See what happens. Age is not defined. Ages, sorry. What happens? Let's see. It's not supported between an instance of a, okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, index out of range. Let's see. For I in ages, if ages at I is greater than or equal to 21, we continue and then we print I. Something is off. Let's see. So less than, yeah, so it keeps saying 8, index out of bounds. Alright, let's view the hint. So if we are looking at it, okay, if checking the elements below, okay, makes sense. Okay, if I, this is supposed to be I, that's when it works. So the reason this is I is because I'm not thinking right, but what it does is for I, or should I just change this to age? Let me just change it to age so it's easier for us to understand. So for age and ages, if the age is less than 21, then continue, means you skip over it, and then otherwise you print out the age. Amazing. Now nested for loops. So loops can be nested in Python as they can with any other programming language. We'll find certain situations that require the nested loops. Suppose that we're in charge of a science class that is split into 3 project teams. Ava, Samantha, Lucille, Zed, Edgar, and Gabriel. So using a for loop or while loop can be useful here to get each team. So we can print out each team, right? But what if we wanted to print each individual student? Now, in this case, we'd actually need to nest our loops to be able to do that, so we can loop through the sub list. Here's what it would look like. So first we have for team and student, teams, and then for student and team, print student. So it's very easy. Python is miles ahead of every other language because of how easy this is to read. Basically, it's saying for every team in the project teams, then we go into every student in the team, we print out the student. It's so nice to read, right? It's so understandable. This would print out Ava, Samantha, James, Lucille, Zed, Edgar, and Gabriel. So it prints out every single person there. Now we've provided a sales data to show the number of scoops sold for different flavors of ice cream at 3 different locations. Scoop Academy, Gilbert's Creamery, Manny's Scoop Shop. Now we want to sum up the total number of scoops across all 3 locations. Start by defining a variable called scoops sold. Scoops sold equals 0. Now loop through the sales data using the following guidelines. For a temporary variable of the for loop, call it location, and then print out each location. Okay, so the for location and sales data, print location. Cool. Now within our sales data loop, nest a secondary loop to go through each location sublist and add the element to scoops sold. By the end, you should have the sum of every number in sales data nested. Okay, cool. So we'll do another for scoops in location. We'll do scoops sold plus equals scoops location, and then print out the scoops sold. And run it, and we get 96. That basically added up everything in here. Alright, so I'm not going to do list comprehensions. That's going to be the next video, but thank you so much for watching. If you stuck it through all the way to the end, I really appreciate your support, and I hope you're learning something. With that, I also want to say, if you're looking for internships, cool programs to join, need help with your resume, need help with the coding interviews, anything like that, or want opportunities to make more money, check out the top link in the description. It's my newsletter. When you sign up to it, you'll get the coding directory, which is my project that I built, that has everything that I did to get my first few internships. So check it out. Top link in the description. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and subscribe if you're new, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one, and have a fantastic day. All right.